Welcome to our inaugural remote options evening. Clearly we would much prefer to be speaking to you in B Hall as we would ordinarily, but of course we have had to adapt things in order to continue with our options processes. We hope this evening will continue to be informative and provide you with key information and guidance about what is an innovative and exciting curriculum that we offer at IGS. Ms Claughton, Deputy Head Teacher, and myself will be presenting this evening, and we've got a team of people in the background as well helping out. A few bits of housekeeping. Just first of all then, if you do have any questions, as you can see on the screen, you can either email in to Year 8 Options at ilkleygs.co.uk, and again we've got a team of staff monitoring that inbox this evening. You should use that email address particularly if you have subject specific questions, and we will send those on to the appropriate members of staff. Similarly, if you've got a question regarding your child who may have special educational needs, if you'd like to email the inclusive learning at ilkleygs.co.uk, which is also on your screen. Also, just a reminder that you can use the chat function, which is available on Microsoft Teams Live. And again, we've got people monitoring that chat bar and will hopefully be able to answer any questions that you may have. The students have been made aware of the Showbie code, where all of the subject information for the Year 8 options exists. So the Showbie code is there on the screen. Students also have this in their email, including one that was sent today, and that's MCQPW. The student does need to join to enable you as parents to see the subject material in there. Hopefully we won't have any technical issues this evening, but there's always a level of unpredictability with these remote events. Should it go down, please just try and be patient and bear with us. We'll try and get it back up and running, but if not, all of the materials, including this presentation, are in the Year 8 Showbie folder. Okay, so what I'm going to do over the next sort of few slides is give you a little bit of background about the curriculum at Ilkley Grammar School and the reasons why we have introduced the curriculum that we have. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just want to make you aware of some of the national changes that have happened over the last few years since 2015. First of all, going back several years now, the situation was very different in terms of assessment. GCSEs were modular, students could take them in small bite-sized chunks, they could resit if they weren't happy with the results. Lots of qualifications, including English, had a high coursework component. So, for example, English in 2014 was 60% controlled assessment and only 40% exam. And there was a whole wide range of different vocational qualifications. Since then, there's been, as I say, some real shifts in how GCSE assessment has worked. I'm not going to go through in detail each point, it's just to give you a flavour of the situation kind of up to this point. But GCSEs are now all linear. I have put up there in brackets in normal circumstances. Exams are taken at the end of a 2-year course, which for us at Ilkley is always Year 11. There's no opportunities for resits, with the exception of English and Maths in years 12 and 13 if students don't get a grade 4 in those subjects. And the amount of coursework or controlled assessment has been reduced significantly. We've also got a stripped back number of vocational qualifications because the government has looked at the list of qualifications and decided which ones they think are most equivalent to GCSEs and have produced an approved list. Just in terms as well then of what the exams involve, You can see there, English and maths they were the first qualifications to change back in 2017. English now has no coursework whatsoever. It's all on exams, 2 in literature, 2 in English language. Maths has increased from 2 exams to 3. It's also much more challenging than the previous specification. You know, they have made it harder. They've introduced, you know, learning formulae by heart and topics such as vectors and conditional probability that weren't in the old specifications. And of course, the grading system has changed as well, which I'll just show you on the next slide. All of those subjects that are in blue on the right hand side, all of those GCSE qualifications are all based now on exam only. There's no controlled assessment, there's no coursework as part of those subjects. And the ones in purple still do have some controlled assessment, but in many cases that controlled assessment percentage has been reduced from what it was previously. So if you take PE, for example, it used to be 60% practical, 40% exam. That's now shifted and it's 60% exam and 40% practical. As you'll be aware, we now have numbers rather than letters, and of course students will be familiar with this because we use the numerical grading at Key Stage 3 as well as Key Stage 4 in part, so you can see progression throughout the years at IGS. And I think this diagram here, whilst it's an old diagram, it was produced back in 2017 when the first new GCSEs were delivered. That clearly shows as well that the additional challenges and the expectations have increased. So whereas a kind of good pass used to be considered to be a grade C, and a grade C has been aligned to a grade 4, a good pass, a strong pass, is now deemed to be a grade 5. So clearly that sits between the old B and C. Similarly, at the top end, whereas the top grade used to be an A star, there's now a grade 9 for exceptional performance. And the new grade 9 is more difficult and demanding than the old A star. So we've got bigger qualifications, particularly in terms of subjects like maths. We've got more exams and we have numerical grading. That's the reason why we introduced the changes to our school day back in 2015. We did that in order to increase teaching time in a number of subjects, knowing that the specifications were getting more demanding and knowing that there was increased content involved as well. That included increasing the number of lessons in English and maths and science from what was there previously, but also as well in years 10 and 11 for English and maths, and also the option subjects as well. So it enabled us to be able to do that. But of course, all of those changes affected schools across the country. They were imposed on us. We didn't have any choice in accepting them. They're all changes at national level. However, what we did do is we took the opportunity to look at the curriculum at IGS. And we decided to make some changes with the Year 9 curriculum by allowing them to make some choices to personalise their curriculum in line with their interests and abilities and career aspirations. So it's now run successfully for a number of years. This isn't something that is new, although we still consider it to be innovative. So that was the situation back in 2014. All students in Year 9 studied the full national curriculum. There was no choice, and around this time, students in Year 9 made those big decisions for GCSE. What we decided to do then, back in 2015, was to give students some choice. We don't refer to it particularly as a 2-1-2 curriculum, but the numbers kind of illustrate what the curriculum's about. So there's 2 years of traditional Key Stage 3, 1 year that's a little bit different, and then 2 years of traditional Key Stage 4. And the difference, of course, in Year 9, as I've said, is because we give students the opportunity within a framework to make some choices about their curriculum. And that experience helps to inform some of their GCSE choices. And therefore, we're continuing with that curriculum in Year 8. Now, we did sort of consider, particularly given the amount of time that has been lost over the last 12 months, do we consider continuing with the curriculum for this Year 8 group in line with the context? But having considered it carefully, I think we were all unanimously in agreement that actually to change it would be to be penalising students again for something which is outside of their control. And also, I think the other, if you like, a safety net, and Ms Claughton will illustrate this later in the presentation, there is a way of choosing a combination of options that allows you still to cover the same subjects that previously students would have done as a full Key Stage 3 national curriculum. So there's that there as well. So we feel that it's right to go ahead and continue with our curriculum for the current Year 8. They don't get free rein. I think it's important to emphasise that. The Year 9 curriculum does comprise of a core component, which is made up of 10 core subjects that you can see there. Clearly, you'd expect, I think, most of those subjects to be there, and I'll talk about why some of them are compulsory shortly. But that means then that by reducing slightly the number of core subjects, students are allowed an element of choice. So in kind of percentage terms, 69%, just over 2/3 of their time is spent on the core curriculum, the subjects on the screen, and then 31% of time is spent on their option choices. And we think that produces a broad and balanced curriculum. We really want to make sure, particularly at Year 9, that students do not narrow too early. So that's one of the reasons why we still have 10 compulsory subjects. That does narrow further going into GCSE, and again we'll talk about sort of GCSEs this time next year, but the diagram that you can see there on the screen just illustrates how we move from 10 core subjects in Year 9 to 6 in Years 10 and 11, and the number of option subjects reduces from 6 in Year 9 to 4 in Years 10 and 11. So students cannot take all of their subjects that they choose at Year 9 through to GCSE, and that's because the size of the specification and the demands of the specification mean we need to give more curriculum time to each of the options. You'll also see from the diagram that whereas geography, history and computing are all part of our Year 9 core curriculum, they become option choices moving forward into Years 10 and 11. So why do we have 10 core subjects then as part of the Year 9 curriculum? As I've said, we don't want students narrowing too early. We do want them to study a broad and balanced curriculum. I think there'll be no surprises there that given the important emphasis on literacy and numeracy skills, of course, the core subjects of English, maths and science are core, and RE is also statutory till the end of Key Stage 4 for all schools, including academies. Of course, we want students to be, active global citizens. We want them to be tolerant. We want them to be informed and be able to engage in those wider debates. And we want them to study PE because, of course, we want them to take their health and their physical fitness seriously and promote that healthy, active lifestyle. I think just IT, I think now more than ever over the last 12 months has illustrated to us the importance of technology, and we want students, particularly in an iPad school, to continue developing those IT skills, those core skills, while some of them may choose to specialise even further by studying computer science or further IT. Geography and history then, we do make core in year 9, but they become options in years 10 and 11. In part, it's unanimously agreed that they do support the subjects that are very literacy based. They do help to promote and enhance literacy skills, but they're also a key component of the EBAC, which again I'll talk about briefly in a minute. Likewise for languages. Now, in a global society, of course, languages are increasingly being valued. They're important to take part in the global market, you know, and increasingly there are a number of certainly graduate schemes that are making languages a desirable requirement as part of those graduate programs because they recognise the skills that they bring. And languages is also part of the EBAC, which as I say, I will talk about. Supported study is available for students. There are a small group of students who are disapplied from a language on joining IGS, again in liaison with the primary school, to focus on literacy and numeracy in particular. And students that don't study a language do continue with supported study, which helps promote their literacy and numeracy skills and give them those organisational skills as well. So what is the English Baccalaureate? I will not spend much time talking about this. It will be something that you hear about more next year. But I want to kind of just mention it because in part it explains why history, geography and languages still have to remain compulsory in year 9. Now, the EBAC isn't new. It was actually introduced 11 years ago, back in 2010. It's not a separate qualification. It's not even a certificate, although initially the government did talk about it accompanying with a certificate. And what it does is a suite of qualifications, and it recognises students who achieve GCSE grade 5 and above in the subjects that are on your screen there. So their highest English grade, maths, 2 sciences, one of which can be computer science at GCSE, language and history or geography. Now, it is the government's ambition, it's not mandatory, and currently we don't make it compulsory at IGS, but it is their expectation for this year group across the country that 90% of students will take that suite of qualifications known as the EBAC. And it basically is that kind of programme of subjects that are considered to be rigorous academic qualifications which show a broad and balanced curriculum. And I've just put a very short definition there about what the English Baccalaureate is. It's considered a naturally academic programme. You know, lots of countries across the world, including, you know, some of the high performing countries educationally, South Korea, Japan, the Netherlands, do have a much larger compulsory core of subjects than we do in the UK. And in part, this is why the EBAC is promoted by the government. All of the subjects in the main, with the exception of computer science, are also facilitating subjects when we go on to A level, which I appreciate is a long way off. And I'll just flick up some quotes from the Department for Education, but also from the Education Select Committee, which does highlight why they see that suite of qualifications as important. And even if students do choose that at GCSE, history or geography and a language, they still have 2 open subjects. But like I say, that just explains kind of the thinking and the rationale behind the core component of the Year 9 programme. So just as I am finishing up and before I pass on in a couple of slides to Ms Claughton, why did we introduce these changes? And like I say, they have been running now for several years, but in part it was a response to student voice. We did an extensive amount of student voice prior to introducing the Year 9 curriculum, and you can see there at the time nearly 80% of both Year 9 and 8 were strongly in agreement that they wanted more of a say in their curriculum. You know, and some of the comments were, I've put one example there on the screen, but some of the comments, you know, were really passionate about, I wish I had time to do a subject that actually meant something to me, and you know, actually was in capital letters. They really felt strongly, and that was a consensus in many ways across the board. You can see the percentage, particularly in Year 8, of students that took part that disagreed was really low, and of course the year groups were much smaller back when we first introduced this curriculum. Secondly, research shows that a curriculum, even in part designed by students and driven by their choices and interests, encourages motivation, it encourages you know, engagement, and ultimately leads to success. And I don't expect you to look through all of those subjects are listed there, but those are from our GCSE results, actually in 2019, because of course 2020 results, while absolutely valid, have not had the same analysis as previous years. But those are the progress scores in those subjects, and they show quite clearly that in the option subjects, students do exceptionally well at IGS. You know, all of those subjects there are subjects which students have gone on to choose at IGS. And you've got the results there from 2019 and 2018 as well. And what that means, if I just take, for example, technology, students on average who took technology achieved a grade and a half higher in technology than students of a similar ability in other schools. Okay, last couple of reasons then before Ms Claughton talks about the Year 9 options programme in detail. The last two reasons really why we introduced the options process was it allowed more time for students to study in more detail in specialist areas, including the creative arts. And also it allowed us to reduce some class sizes in some of the subjects as well. And of course, whereas in other schools, subjects like philosophy or photography or computer science aren't introduced until students have actually committed to them as GCSE choices, our programme allows them to get a flavour, as Ms Claughton will now go on to explain.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mrs Purnell, for handing over to me. And I'm Ms Claughton. For those of you who don't know me, though of course many of you will know me from leading on the options process so far this year, particularly in your options assembly. And you will of course get to see me a little bit more in your Year 8 into 9 student tutor sessions next week with a member of leadership team or myself. So I just want to go through the actual options curriculum with you this evening, and hopefully to give parents a little bit more detail on top of the assembly that's already been introduced by me, the details of which can be found on the subject options page on the IGS website, which is a narrated presentation. Okay, so I'd like to focus on the option blocks in particular that Year 8 students are able to then select as they move through the course of the next few weeks. And as you can see on the screen there are a suite of different option blocks which each contain a suite of subjects sitting underneath. And as Mrs. Purnell has already alluded to, we do of course have essentially some freedom within the structure of pre-aligned boxes and blocks. So I'm going to take you through how Year 8 into 9 students are able to personalise their curriculum, in which case. Of course, we've got the blocks set out as they are there, as you can see on the screen, because we want to make sure that we don't narrow the students' experience of learning and experience of the curriculum too soon. And so we've obviously, as you can see, we've got a technology option block. We have options 2 and 3, which are a double creative arts block where students are able to choose 2 from the list of subjects there. And then we've got 3 free option choices for options 4, 5 and 6. And there are a few occasions where students, of course, have a couple of rules, if you like, where they can't choose certain subjects together in the same block, but certainly the free option blocks there do enable students to personalise further. So as you can see there, I just want to make sure I answer this question in particular. Often we do get asked, particularly in the option emails that have been coming through so far, has my child got a broad and balanced enough curriculum? And have we got, has he or she got enough of a balance? And we believe that our option block design there, it basically makes the choices foolproof and that the balance is built in already. So we do, of course, understand that there's both a motivational and an academic achievement logic to personalising the curriculum, which Mrs. Purnell's already shown you from the sort of vertical progression into GCSE from the subjects that do extremely well across the board at IGS. So in addition to the 10 core subjects that students will be taking, students will get to choose from the blocks that you can see here. And I do think this is particularly the area that students look forward to in personalising their curriculum offer. There are just a couple of important points to note, which of course is listed in the options booklet, which has already been provided and sent to you via email, both as parents and as students. But the important points to note are that skills for success option, as you can see listed at the bottom of the free option choices there, that is an alternative curriculum course, and that's for students, of course, for whom this is appropriate, and they will be guided towards this option. And this is obviously only a guided option in Year 9 for students who perhaps require a bit of extra study support or literacy support, but also for students who get the opportunity to study more of a unique qualification there. There is an adjustment for those of you in Year 8 who currently don't learn a language in supported study as well. And of course, that means you're not expected to pick up a language moving through into Year 9, and your supported study will continue in replacement of a language. Okay, so as you can see, with the core subjects already mentioned, plus the suite of options chosen for your personalised curriculum, the result will be, of course, a broad and balanced curriculum. So what I'm going to do now is just talk you through in a slight bit of detail the range of subjects on offer in each of the blocks. So starting with technology then. And I do think it's particularly important to reference technology being more of course, a project-based and practical curriculum area, which of course may have been hit slightly more than other subjects this year, with students experiencing their technology curriculum in Year 8 slightly differently to perhaps they would usually. And of course, we do have a bit of reassurance really with the essential technology option that you are able to choose, that students are able to choose, which in essence is a short course, a mixture of lots of different specialisms within the technology subjects. So if I would recommend, if you are of course struggling to pick which technology specialism you would prefer, if you haven't had as much practical experience in school in a particular specialism this year, then that would be a good choice for you. And I just think on that, I do think it's important to note that, you know, we are here to reassure you as a student body as well, for the students who are listening in. And, you know, very much this is something we will focus on in your tutor sessions next week, and with obviously with Mrs. Robin and Mr. Irwin as well. You know, we're here to support you if you are finding it difficult to make those choices. Okay, so yeah, I think if we just move on then, looking at some of the other technology specialisms, you can choose if you don't like the sound of essential technology, if you don't like the sound of having a kind of short course, you can specialise, and you can choose from food, textiles, resistant materials, and electronic products. So if you do choose a specialist technology, you can also choose, if you're really into your technology subjects, you can also choose a third specialist technology, you know, as part of your free option as well. And so, as you can see, we're really proud of our technology curriculum area. We're able to offer most of these courses, of course, all the way through from year 8 into 9 and 9 into 10 as well at GCSE. And it is just a great opportunity for you to get a flavour before you do progress through into Key Stage 4. Okay, so I'm just going to move on now and to showcase our creative arts option block, which of course is 2 choices from a range of subjects that appear on the screen now. So you can choose art or photography. Now I'll just make a point on this one, which is why there is an asterisk there, which many of you will have noticed is also in the booklet that has been sent out. You can actually choose art and photography together, but not within the same creative arts option block. So you would have to choose one of those from this option block, and then one of those subjects is a free option. But again, this is all explained in the booklet. You can also, as your second choice, you could choose drama, you could choose media studies. And again, this is a subject combination that has a little bit of a rule attached to it, as you can see from the asterisk there. You can choose both media and photography, but again, one of them would have to be from your free option, your free options. And then, of course, you can choose music as well. So we do really value our creative arts suite, and we do appreciate the importance of the place that the arts has in our curriculum. So again, we are really keen that everybody gets an experience and a full experience of those. So on to the free options now. So this is usually the part that students enjoy the most because they get the most autonomy and the most free choice. But of course, your option 5, 6 and 7 is a free choice set of options. And we do have, you know, a range of subjects that you can choose from. And I am going to spend some time going through those. And of course, as I've said before, you can add on another specialist technology, you can add on a third creative subject. And I think really, if you are thinking of doing something like that, you do need to have a consideration of where you might progress with those subject choices into further study at Key Stage 4, or obviously in terms of post-16 or careers, or whatever pathway of progression is your choice. So, you know, I am going to spend a little bit of time on these subjects, some of which are brand new subjects to you, of course, as Year 8 students moving into Year 9, which again is a really exciting time for students. And I just want to point out, I will come on to the options form, which again is an electronic form. We are completely remote with our options experience this year. And I'll come on to that shortly, but just to point out everything, any questions in connection with the options online form, you can of course feel free to post a question tonight in the Q&A, but any technical questions will be dealt with during the tutor sessions next week. So again, I will come on to that shortly. So, you know, there is a lot of choice here. I'm going to go through it. You will, of course, get until the 22nd of March, Year 8, in order to select from this fantastic range of subjects. Now, there is an important point just to reference. If you are a student, that if your child or if you as a student are considering picking up a second language, we think that's a fantastic a fantastic course, and we do really value preserving that opportunity. But there are, again, a few recommendations if you are thinking of going down this route. So if you currently study French, but you're interested in picking up Spanish, for example, then you will complete an intensive 1-year ab initio course, which means from scratch course that enables you in 1 year's time, so throughout your year 9 curriculum, to get up to the same level as your first language there, your first option language that you're already studying, so that you are GCSE ready. So as you can see, if you are you are a student that's interested in taking this this second language option, then you need to be prepared to work at pace, and you need to be prepared to work very hard. And just to point out that it's an excellent opportunity, but it is a very intensive course. Our students at Ilkley Grammar School that do choose it enjoy it very much, go on to achieve fantastic results, but that's just something that I wanted to point out. Of course, students will be in the same class as other students that have opted to choose a second language, so that's just for your information, really. And clearly, just to point out, if students opt to pick up a second language, then they can't drop the first language that they've been studying from year 7. Now, this is again one of a bit of a frequently asked question, really, that we do come up against. So I think it's important to focus on this. If you are thinking of this second language option, it does take up 2 free option choices, and of course there is an implication there that, again, you have to be committed to the development of learning a second language. So again, that's something to consider, and therefore that just leaves you with 1 free option choice as your sixth option then. So again, that's just something that's valuable to be aware of. I just want to point out as well that if you are thinking of this, then we do suggest that it's only really recommended for students who are performing well in their first language, because of course, due to the fast track nature of this second language, you need to be already achieving well in your first modern foreign language option. So please note, of course, that you can't take Spanish into Key Stage 4, so from year 10 and year 11, if you've only studied French in year 7, 8 and 9. So there is a bit of an implication, if you are thinking of taking a second language at a later date, then that's not something we offer, and you do need to consider that now, really. We do welcome flexibility here. In some senses, we've got slight flexibility for students who are opting to take a second language. So if you do choose a second language, then you can choose only 1 creative art instead of 2, if that's the right choice for you. Okay, so really, what's often quite an interesting point is if your teachers, myself included, but as you can see there on the screen, Mrs. Roban, Mr. Calvert, if students' teachers could go back, what options would they go for? And I've tried to showcase a range of different choices there, really. And this is just to give you a flavour and a bit of a model for what your option blocks could look like. So me at the top there, you can see, I'm interested in fashion, so I've gone for textiles. My creative suite, I've taken both drama and music, which clearly work well together, of course. But being an English literature specialist myself and a classics specialist, I'd be interested in exploring drama if I could go back and be in the same shoes that you're all in now. And then for my 3 free options, I always studied languages at school, and I would do that all over again. I would take the double option choice of a second language, having already studied French in year 7 and 8. And then again, I'm interested in the big questions of life. So there we go. We've got philosophy as my final free option. I'm not going to go through any of the others that are here. The copy of this presentation, of course, is on Sherby, as is the option booklet. But again, you can see, you know, there are a range of different routes that you can go down, and it very much has to be a personal choice for the student, you know, with parental support and support from tutors along the way, of course. So that's just something that you know, exemplifies really what your curriculum could look like for you. Now, this again is a question that we do get asked relatively often, particularly for students in Year 8 moving into 9. Does it mean, by having an options process, which not all schools do, does it mean that you know, my child will start their GCSEs and start their GCSE courses in Year 9, and therefore they'll, you know, they're effectively constraining their curriculum? No, it doesn't mean that. So I'll explain that just a second. We very much see Year 9, as Mrs. Purnell mentioned, as in the 2-1-2 model, as a bridging year. And whilst we do, of course, expose students to GCSE style content, you know, in order to give students a flavour of what they might experience when they are taking their Key Stage 4 options this time next year, when students are in Year 9, we don't have subjects, you know, starting their GCSEs early, other than with a very small exception for subjects that are particularly content heavy at Key Stage 4, despite obviously already having a lot of extra you know, time committed to it. And these are, of course, science and maths, due to the increased demand of those courses with the new reformed GCSEs. So I just wanted to point that out. And I'll come on to separate science in a second, because we have had some questions already about this. But of course, all students study all 3 sciences, but I'll come on to separate science, of course, later, and as you move into Key Stage 4. Okay, so are Year 8 students mature enough to be making choices is another key question that we are often asked, particularly for Year 8s into 9s. And, you know, many successful schools locally and nationally do run either a full options process or a partial options process with success. And we believe that because of the nature of the way we designed our option blocks, that it is the right, you know, it is a progressive model, and it is a model that supports both motivation and achievement, particularly that we have an intensive amount of support and guidance that we offer our students. You know, we're very confident that Year 8s at IGS are guided in a way that they can make informed choices moving forwards. So because we've carefully considered the design of our curriculum model, so students, of course, have a little amount of opportunity to personalise their curriculum, but also have a broad and balanced offer with the core subjects, of course, included. Then we do have those structures in place to keep students, you know, having a good experience of their education. The choices, of course, for students in Year 8 into 9 are designed to inform the later options process, which I just alluded to before, into Key Stage 4. And so I just want to clarify, students are not locked into GCSE syllabi if they take up a particular subject now. You know, they can almost try the subject on next year and then choose whether to progress into Key Stage 4 and further pursue that subject, unlike with a full 3-year Key Stage 4, of course, where you start your subjects, which we don't do. So if students, for example, as you can see there in the model, if students choose the following combination, this was something that Mrs. Purnell mentioned earlier in the presentation, they can still continue as normal effectively with what their current experience is in Year 8. So if your child is somebody who's particularly struggling to make their choices, you can still take all of the subjects through into Year 9 that are already compulsory in year 8 this year, and that's just an example there of what that could look like for you, which again I think it's important to point out given the very minimal disruption at IGS, but the national disruption due to remote education, of course. So obviously if you don't feel ready to choose, then you could think of using a model like that. Right, so again, I'll just very briefly touch on this, but why hasn't IGS started GCSEs early to operate a full 3-year Key Stage 4? This is something that has been over recent years a relatively hot debate. But again, like I've just mentioned before, we've weighed up the advantages of doing both, and we believe our 2-1-2 model is a really innovative design, but also allows time to be spent on subjects that students may consider at a later date, and they can gain that early experience of GCSE style units, but without the confines of having to worry about assessment outside of the syllabus. Of course, they get to experience that. We know that the benefits that in the long term that it can have on achievement and progress, and where students do get the opportunity to personalise. There's all sorts of academic research in this area where students do get the opportunity to personalise. They of course do better later down the line, and they're able to pursue their interests, and therefore motivation and engagement in their educational offer is heightened. So that's just by giving students a say, even in year 8 into 9, is something that we're very passionate about. Of course, the 2-1-2 model that we have, that the students will be experiencing next year, in the bridging year, is that we have the opportunity to be flexible. So choices, of course, are not finalised until year 9, as you progress into Key Stage 4, and then English, Maths and Science, if they need to, can start teaching GCSE level work if it's considered appropriate, because we can do that for some of the subjects that are compulsory and move through. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go into all of those details here, but we have consulted the research, and we do believe that our model is both innovative and offers opportunity for achievement and personalisation. Okay, so does this mean that students won't have any new subjects to choose from when deciding this time next year, when you're deciding for your Key Stage 4 options? And new GCSE subjects are available, and I've mentioned this one already, this time next year. So for example, next year you would be able to pursue the sciences to a greater degree. Of course, if you are, as I said before, all students, in whether you do combined science, often called trilogy, or separate science, they all are involved in the study of biology, chemistry and physics, which all year 9 students will start to study as discrete subjects already. But the separate science offers opportunity for a greater level of immersion in the sciences, and of course it ultimately, when you do opt for it into Key Stage 4, it ultimately leads to 3 separate qualifications, which of course is why we have the namesake separate. Health and social care is another new option that this time next year you'd be able to take up if you are interested in that field of work. Ultimately, travel and tourism as well is a particularly popular choice, and often students do like to accompany that, say for example, with languages. Hospitality and catering, of course, is another fantastic option that we offer in school, and then of course performing arts, which whilst we obviously offer drama next year for year 8 into 9, performing arts has a slightly different composition to the GCSE, but GCSE drama is also an option for students this time next year. So again, you'll still be able to further personalise and start new subjects if you so wish. So how does what you will study next year, when you'll be making your options, link to your year 10 curriculum? And again, you'll hear this from me next year anyway, but as you can see there, students will be entering the year 10 option process with a great level of advantage, because of course you'll have gone through an options process before, and you'll have already done the options online form, etc. But the year 9 curriculums being designed there to be broad and balanced and to have a greater number of core subjects and therefore balance. The year 10 and 11 curriculum does truncate slightly into a reduced number of core subjects, which whilst offers the opportunity to have, you know, we've only got 4 option choices, they make up a greater proportion of your curriculum and timetable, and that's again due to the demands of a GCSE qualification that students have to complete. So that's something that I think, you know, you are this year having to think about progressing into Key Stage 4 as well, and therefore the options you take this year could naturally form a pathway as you move through. But again, you know, I don't want to dwell on this too much because you're already in the throngs of an options process currently, and you will hear from me next year. Okay, so a couple of other questions that we do get asked about is how will I be taught? So will I be taught in my form, in my tutor group? Will I be taught in sets? And also we've got our X and Y bands. So for next year, students will be placed into an X or a Y band, and they'll be taught most of their subjects in these bands, including for maths, English and science. And basically this just allows us to be able to have 12 classes or sets, depending on the subject, rather than 11 and 6 in each band. So it, you know, it is a timetabling feature, but pleasingly, I do want to mention that, of course, this year, tutors and heads of year, as well as curriculum leaders and Mrs Purnell, of course, as well, who builds the timetable. We do have the opportunity, and we are committed to making sure every student gets placed in a band, the same band as at least one of their friends, which again is something to offer a little bit of reassurance as you transition into your year 9 bridging year. So that's something that, whilst we don't ask for you to choose subjects based on your friendship, we do acknowledge that students, particularly this year, would, you know, learn with a sense of community and achieve well as a result. So that's something that we are guaranteeing, that all students will be with at least one friend in their X or Y band to facilitate this. And of course, we've got tutors recommending for certain groups to stay together as long as they work well together. And just there you can see the 3 option subjects will be taught across the year group as well, and this is also how you will be timetabled as you move through into Key Stage 4. So you will have seen this table before. It's also on our website, but you will have seen it in the options booklet. As you can see down the left, I've detailed out the process and the different steps along the way to the year 8 option process, and then down the right, of course, the deadlines and dates. And we are quite far down through the process, of course, but next week we still have the tutor group sessions with the leadership team, either myself or another member of the leadership team, where students will get an opportunity to have any questions answered. So a further opportunity for Q&A, but also to understand the online options form as well, which some students, of course, whilst we're remote, may have had some technical issues with, and we can iron those out in those sessions there. So again, if you know, just as another alternative really to having the options mailbox that Mr Calvert has announced on the chat bar, but also Mrs Purnell mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, students do have the opportunity to forward any questions, particularly about the combinations of their subjects, for instance, to their form tutors, who will pass those on to the member of leadership team. And most of them may be about the electronic options form, which is a brand new process for you moving into year 9, having never done a process before, but it uses something called Sims Options Online, and as I say, you will have this modelled to you in your tutor session next week. But essentially you click your 6 option choices, and the order in which you click on them becomes your order of preference. In order to change your preference, then you need to select a choice, deselect them and start again to have your perfect order of preference, and that's just something that, you know, we do sometimes get asked. Just to point out, and this is a bit of a technical description for you to be aware of. Again, this has been sent out by Mr. Holder, who is our data manager, and students will receive an email, and both an activation email with some guidance and a code, and that will take them to registering for SIMS options online. But just to point out, students, then once you have registered, you do not go back through the same link. You go back, if you want to return to the same options form at a later date, you go back through the link that's on the screen there. But again, this is all in the guidance that has been sent out by Mr. Holder. So as I said before, you know, I would encourage you to have a go and see if you can log on to that and register before your tutor sessions next week, and then any technical issues can be ironed out in those. Okay, so obviously if you have any further questions and you'd like to ask something very specific, then we will have the opportunity. We've got members of the senior leadership team monitoring the live Q&A chat bar within this presentation, and alternatively students can submit their questions to their tutors. I've put the dates on the slide there for the different tutor sessions, depending on which form you are. And of course, as Mr. Calvert has mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, on the chat bar, then we do have the Year 8 options mailbox, which is being monitored throughout this evening and following tonight as well. So it just gives me the opportunity really to thank you all for attending our options presentation. We hope we've been able to answer your questions, but failing that, we have those facilities to do so following tonight's event. And I hope you enjoy, of course, the rest of your evening. Thank you.